Hey everyone, welcome again to the latest installment of The Way It Is. And I'm your host, Luca with Remax Service First Realty here in Kingston. Thank you for those that continue to follow along. Today, I thought I would either demystify, debunk, and basically lay bare the misconceptions or perceptions of fixing and flipping houses. Now, I can tell you that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this was actually could be lucrative. I'm not saying it still can't be, but there's different variables at play now. And I actually had a set of clients that was their sole source of income. We would literally buy and sell 3 to 4 homes a year. I wasn't part of that. I was obviously facilitating that with them, but that was their raison d'etre. We sourced out specific properties that we felt fit our model and the variables, and it worked for a bit. And then, of course, times have changed, prices have gone up, cost of materials have gone up, and hence, therefore, margins have gone incredibly down. And so therein is the rub in terms of if you really don't know what you're doing, you can really end up upside down in one of these situations. And for instance, I remember back, given the example I just described, that I always had, and this is going to sound, for those of you that listen that have done this and realize a good profit, I used to have the 20-20-20 rule, I used to call it, which was when you acquired the asset or the property, it was going to cost you pretty much $20,000 to do that in soft costs between land transfer tax, legal fees, carrying costs, blah, blah, blah. And then back then, you could actually renovate a house depending on what it was and where it was for around $20,000. And then ideally, you wanted to try to make 20 on your 20. At least you want to get 100% return on the money that you spent on the property. So if you didn't have going in a minimum $60,000 spread between acquisition price and sale price, the numbers just weren't going to make sense. And that's not even counting, of course, these people did the work themselves. So that's a lot of the work themselves, unless it required licensed tradespeople, i.e. electricians, plumbers, HVAC, that kind of thing, right? So I'm going to walk you through. And then the other thing is, I'm going to jump around here a bit, but the other variable that I think most people that fix and flip don't take into consideration and never rarely take into consideration is the tax component of this, the capital gains exposure that happens. Now, if you bought your own home, said it was your principal residence, fixed it up, and sold it, then there is no capital gains. It's your principal residence. Anything that you make is tax-free. That's standard. And I know there was a movement afoot earlier in the year with the housing madness that was going on and grumblings that they were going to try to get away with or get rid of that and start taxing even those gains, which I think has now died the death it deserves. And I think I've talked about this before in a previous podcast, but I'll say it again. There was the situation now where about a year or so ago, CRA is aware of every transaction, every real estate transaction that happens anywhere in Canada gets recorded. The lawyer has to sign a form and send it to CRA. So they are aware of every property disposition, acquisition that happens in the country. And so that was initiated because there was a lot of people trying to circumvent or find the loophole when they were buying, let's say, a cottage property, selling it, saying it was their principal residence, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, making great profits, and they didn't want to pay the capital gains. So now, anytime a property is bought and sold, CRA knows about it. So trying to make, you can't have more than one principal residence as well. So there you go. There's the rub. So if your name's on more than one deed, one of them is not your principal residence. So, or only one is. So I'm going to talk you through just a quick little hypothetical scenario. And even so, let's fast forward to today, where of course, all, you know, you've come to know that the market is the most robust market in the history of real estate in Kingston. You know, the average price I think is pushing I haven't checked it, but I want to say 530 something or whatever. And because of the pandemic, all the supply chains are pooched. And the cost of materials have gone up. Acquiring the materials there's delays in that. There's all of that, right? Which exacerbates this flipping process. And it's not all, and so what bothers me, sorry, I'm a bit of a squirrel moment. And that's what bothers me about all these HGTV programs, where these people come in and say, I can do this for $10,000. Bullshit. Doesn't happen. Can't happen. You can't even get a kitchen right now, a base kitchen, I don't think at Home Depot or Lowe's for around $10,000, if you can even get one in stock. So, hypothetical scenario. Let's say you're working with a great realtor like myself or my team, and you pay $450,000. Okay, and you find it in an area, and here's the thing. You got to find this home in an area that you think, if you go and renovate this place, the appreciable value will actually not exceed what the values for the area might be, or what someone might be willing to pay for that area. So you don't want to be, it's a fine line between finding that upper limit to crossing it where someone's going to say, I can't be the first person to spend X in this subdivision because it's just not going to work for me. Now, that being said, people do pay premiums for premium properties that are in premium condition in good locations, okay? Aside from what I just described. So let's say you buy a place for $450,000. Let's say you can find one. Land transfer tax is $5,475. Legals, I'm just going to round it up to $2,000. Renos are going to be around, I'm going to call it $100,000 because you really can't do much for under $100,000 these days. To buy that place, you got to put a minimum 20% down payment unless you had $450,000 cash in the bank. That's a different model. Most people don't. If you do, then you're ahead of the curve. But if you don't, you're putting 20% down, there's 90 grand. So your first mortgage is $360,000. Let's say you get the best variable rate out there. Maybe it's around 1.35%. Your carrying costs are $1,216 a month just for your mortgage and interest, okay? Aside from taxes, utilities, blah, blah, blah. So you got $5,500 roughly in land transfer tax, $2,000 in legals, $100,000 in renos, and roughly $6 to $7, $8,000 in carrying costs. Because I assume 5 months to turn this project around. At least 30, 60 days to get it organized, work done, people in, materials in, and then, so let's call it 5 months. You used to be able to do stuff in 90 days. I wouldn't, that would be a lot of work, and you'd be working there day and night, I'd say. So you're roughly looking at around $205,000 into the project, okay? So now at $205,000, add back to the purchase price of $450,000, you're at $650 and change, right? But that's not exactly how the math works. So let's say you can actually flip this house in 5 months for, say, $600,000. Seems like a lot, right? So if you bought it for $450,000, you're selling it for $600,000. It's a $150,000 gain on the surface, and that's what unfortunately people's minds go to, and they don't do the math. So you got to sell that asset now. So the average commission in Kingston is 4%. I'm not saying if you dealt with the realtor that sold it to you, they wouldn't give you a discounted commission on the way out, which can happen. It does happen. I've done it for long-term clients. But let's do worst case scenario. Let's say 4% with HST. There's 27 and change, another $2,000 for legals. Take off your mortgage. You're netting out $210,000. Take off the $205 that you've got invested into the project, and you're left with around $7,000. So you can see that after 5 months of sweat, labor, busting your hump, that you've made back your 90 grand, you've made back your expenses, but your profit, net real profit, is $7,000. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth doing all of that for $7,000? And isn't there a better way to make 90 grand make $7,000? I dare say there's a financial planner out there somewhere that would probably put it into a mutual or some kind of higher risk investment that might return you better than that. So there's those are and then we haven't even accounted for the capital gains, right? Because if this isn't your principal residence, then that profit gets added to your own personal income, and then that gets accounted for at tax time. So there. Now, again, if they had that $450,000 in cash, life is good, because now all you're dealing with is your actual real expenses. You don't have those carrying costs. You don't have a mortgage to pay out. Now you're making money on your money. But at the end of the day, you still have to ask yourself, what's the real return on that $450,000 at the end of 5 months? And I bet you it'd probably be less than 5%. Which begs the question, isn't there a better way to make 5% on $450,000? Unless you really want to be that person that wants to spend 5 months renovating houses and you just love renovating houses, right? So there's that side of it too. So that's where I wanted to dive into this, because I get it all the time. And again, less now because the margins are so small, that really the margins are small. And flipping has become a very expensive venture, and it can happen. You can still make money, but it's the old adage, it takes money to make money. And this has become, I dare say, a rich man's game, in the sense that if you don't have a lot of capital behind you and financial wherewithal, because really the model that seems to be working now is because of prices, because of the cost of materials, because of what's happening in the world. The model is now, instead of that house being $450,000, you're actually buying a house for $650,000, and now you're making it worth over $1 million, 1.1, 1.2. Well, you know that's going to be more than $100,000 in renovations, right? So, because people at those price points, you have to find the right location that's going to support that kind of an upswing, and second, you've got to know what you're doing in terms of finishes, what people are looking for, and the expectations people want in those types of properties. So it can happen. An area where I think the potential exists to make larger gains is in the waterfront area. And actually, Ben and I are talking about a podcast about talking about luxury properties and waterfront properties, which I think will be upcoming. But certainly, waterfront is that intrinsic variable, or that other intangible that would help propel value and add to your profit line, or to your profit margin. Where in or in an estate subdivision where there's the potential for more growth. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I welcome any conversations, or to sit down and have a coffee and go through the math with people. But I thought it would be a good idea, just because I know there's still a lot of HGTV programs out there that people go in and they say they can flip a house in a week for $10,000 and make $100,000 profit. Well, you know what? If people are doing that, then source them out and learn their secrets. But I can tell you, here in Kingston, having gone through it myself with clients, having renovated my own home in the last couple of years, and knowing what stuff costs and trying to do things as cost effective as possible, the margins are very tight if you don't know what you're doing. So anyway, I hope this helps, because I know everybody's always interested in real estate, and everybody always wants to say, hey, can we buy that and flip it? So, and again, like I said, I just wanted to have that conversation, open that door, and certainly happy to have further conversations if you want to reach out. So thanks for listening again, and we'll talk to you next time.